Good evening, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have all of you attend this roundtable discussion today with us. I'm Sneha Jha, editor of ETCIO and your moderator for the session. And I'd like to sincerely thank each one of you to take your time out and be here with us today. Thank you once again. This roundtable session is brought to you by ETCIO in association with Teradata, a provider of cloud database and analytics related software products and services. We have with us industry practitioners who've been there, done that, and are here to help. With me today is Christopher Jackson, Cloud Evangelist for South Asia, Teradata. Hello and good evening, Chris. Welcome to this roundtable discussion. Thank you for taking out the time to be with us. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to you for your presentation. The topic for this presentation and the roundtable discussion is tracing customer journeys using data to amp up customer experience. With that, I give you Christopher Jackson.
Good evening, everyone. As Sneha, thank you very much for having us. I'm delighted to be here representing Teradata today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can improve the lives of consumers through the power of data. So today I'm going to share with you some of the approaches that we use in data-driven, context-aware marketing, right, of especially consumer products that we use to drive customer engagement and remove friction, right, that will help you lead to more revenue and ultimately more satisfied customers. So we know today that today's consumers have extremely high expectations. They're looking for quality service and they want problem resolution on first contact, right? Consumers want to connect directly to the providers of the service, but often over new channels, right? They're looking at channels such as social media, messenger applications, in addition to the traditional channels they've always used, branch office visits, call centers, emails, SMS messages. The direct interaction with consumers will help you drive engagement, right? And it leads to what we call high impact moments, right? Brand loyalty and those positive interactions that are really part of the extended customer journey. But this creates some challenges, right? And the first challenge is really for an organization to bring this data together across all of these channels, integrate it together, and then make sure that they're protecting carefully the customer's identity and personal information, right? The Omnichannel Mandate really requires organizations to break down those data silos that exist around and weave together this integrated, holistic kind of a view of persons and their households, right? And ultimately their preferences. And I think that's really a key. So what we see is that most commercial organizations have been forced to rethink and transform their messaging, their products, their services, their channels, but even their metrics, right? Those are changing across and they're linking and coordinating physical services with their digital services in real time. And they're doing it in a way where they're targeting this friction that's part of that relationship. They want these interactions to feel seamless. We know from our customers that some of them are running tens of thousands of simultaneous marketing campaigns. And they're doing this every month, and they're sometimes able to consistently be able to achieve as much as 40% uptake rates on those campaigns. And they do this by offering relevant, personalized offers that are timely, and they're built off analytic models that derive an accurate and visible picture of those customers' needs, their attitudes, and their behaviors. And if you can do that, your offers on those campaigns will be perceived as valuable, not spam, right? And that's really, I think, key. So we look at now, how do we do this at a granular level with models that are set to address the segment of one? And that means that we can now begin to hyper-personalize these messaging. And so our goal as organizations is to create high-impact digital customer experiences, right, and make that a priority because these are the best way to reach audiences. And we need to have ready the next best offer, the recommendation that can be delivered. And ideally, we want to deliver that in real time, right? We're moved beyond a batch world into a real-time world. And so what we see is that this shift to this customer moments thinking is really a key business change that's making us be able to sort of recognize and talk about what's actually happening in the moment. So as we engage with these customers, right, when they're interacting, when they have a specific need, right, when they have a want or a problem that we need to solve, what has become sort of the default approach that business teams are using when they plan and communicate is this notion of customer moments that matter. And so we know, from research that groups like Forrester have done, right, digitally engaged customers that have a real-time event that is triggered, it's hyper-personalized, that interaction will cause them to be 7 times more loyal, right? Not only that, they'll be 8 times more likely to spend. And even more importantly, they're 8 times more likely to recommend this business or this opportunity or this offering to their family and friends, right? That is absolutely critical. So smart organizations are taking these learnings about hyper-personalization and this customer moments, and they're saying, how do we use this to predict and recommend, drive engagement with our brand, right? But make sure that we respect people's individual preferences, make sure we respect opt-in. Those are the things that are kind of table stakes for doing this, right? Ultimately, if you do this, there's a big payoff that's there. And it comes from this contextual level insights. And that's going to hopefully tell us which customers are more likely to stay, who's going to spend more, right? And who's going to make that positive interaction or positive recommendation. So we know ultimately that data is going to lead the way, right? At the end of the day, what we really want to do is to establish not just a customer 360 view of the data that integrates that available data. That's important. Most organizations have started doing those things. But we're also looking to say, how do we use fuzzy matching of identities? How do we actually make sure that we know who is the customer and who else is in the household? We want to make sure that we have cataloged that data and made it accessible to the people in the organization that actually need to deliver these services. All right. And we need to make sure that based on transaction history and events, that we can actually identify these patterns of behavior. And for us, what we see is a mature organization that has accomplished these kind of things will have as many as 2,000 attributes in their customer profiles. They'll have as many as 400 KPIs related to these digital interactions. And those KPIs are available to their analysts and their data scientists, and they're consistent and built off integrated data. No more silos. All right. I think that's really what we're seeing right now is a huge opportunity to take this and drive marketing effectiveness because you can do these other things. So as we look at this process of hyper-personalization and segment of one, we think it follows very much of a framework. And that framework is as simple as listen. Listen to what the data is telling you. Listen to what's there. Make sure once you have it in one place and you understand its quality, what data can be trusted or not, that establishes the context. Once you can listen, the next step is to understand. In that context, what does this mean? Once you understand the context, now you can make decisions with confidence. When you can make decisions with confidence, you can take actions. If you don't close the loop with an action, all you have is insight. And insight on its own is interesting, but it doesn't actually create an ROI, right? The ROI comes from taking action and doing that in production. And I think that's really the opportunity we see in the cloud and everywhere else is to make this easier and easier to do. So as we look ahead, most organizations are pretty comfortable with a batch mode kind of a process. And in the batch mode processes, we can build a pretty good profile. And so most organizations have established some sort of customer segmentation and modeling built off of that profile. But if you can add the behavioral signals to that, what you'll see is that the efficacy of those models becomes substantially better. That's just before you even address the real-time side of the equation. Just knowing what you have and doing it in context with integrated data makes a huge, huge difference. And so for us, what we see is when we begin to interact with folks, we want to be able to understand those digital interactions, look at those behavioral signals, and with that, if we can do it in real time especially, we can respond in real time also. And so the key questions like, who are the customers? How did they arrive here? Right? What do they want? What's their preference? And what do they want to buy? And then what did they actually do? Right? Did they put some in the cart and then take it out of the cart again? And why? Right? And what's happening? And that happens across channels, and it happens across a broader period of time. So a session isn't just a simple, I came onto your webpage and I did something, but I interacted with your store, I interacted with your customers, I interacted with the other folks on social media, and that influenced the decision that I made. So one of the things that we found is quite curious, right, as we worked with our customers around the world in retail and e-commerce and payments and digital marketing for services, what we found was about 70% of the data that we had already collected from a digital marketing perspective addressed digital fraud detection and prevention, right? And so what we see is that most of the fraud kinds of activities, particularly that are happening in real time, as we move to a real-time focus, they come from time pressure, right? They put people under pressure to act without the ability to cross-check that information. And so when people's life savings are at risk in a bank, when people are given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or in-the-moment actions, we need to be able to detect those things as an organization and help victims protect themselves. We need to be able to take action and be preventative. And I think that's what's really interesting to us, is to understand, do we know who is the legitimate customer and who is actually undertaking the actions? Where is that a bot? Right? Is that somebody that's not really there? Right? Particularly when you get to money transfers or payments or other things. And so we look at this and we say, when you're going to prevent fraud and do it at scale and in real time, context matters. Fraud is rarely atomic. It's something that happens as a series of trial activities and then a big hit, right? It is a sequence of events. And so we have to make up-down decisions, yes-no decision. Do I approve this transaction? Do I allow this to go through? But we have to do it in the context of who that customer is and what else has already happened. And for us, we see this as a key point where data and analytics can make a huge, huge difference, right? And address this sort of evolving series of threats. We know that fraud is exploding, right? It threatens the digital journey. So from a customer experience perspective, all those fraudsters are causing issues for us. We want to deliver a fantastic customer experience. We want that customer journey to be frictionless, and the fraudsters are throwing additional friction to the process. So not only have to do what you need to do to optimize your process, but you also have to now take a look at, how am I going to minimize the friction of this? How am I going to protect customers from this? We need to take some level of responsibility for that. But the numbers are growing, and they're just mind-boggling. As we work with customers around the world, we see some huge things. So the ROI on this kind of data is quite interesting. But ultimately, what you'll see is contextual decisioning makes a difference, from hyper-personalization to marketing analytics to customer experience, even risk, right? And now this emerging space of fraud detection and prevention. So as we looked at one of our clients in banking, they've already built 115 applications downstream of this data. It's not one use case or two use cases. It's literally hundreds. And you don't want to reintegrate that data every time you do this. You want to do this in a real fashion that's going to allow you to leverage that investment. We have a retail client that's built more than 100 actual applications downstream. So these are growing, and there's still a lot of space for innovation, right? Nobody has a single solution for this problem. There are no silver bullets, but there are things that we can do and actions we can take that will progress us down this pathway. So ultimately, our vision is this frictionless customer experience that leads to loyal, satisfied, continuously engaged customers, right? We think leading organizations have an omnichannel view. They have the ability to interact directly with their customers via the customer's preferred channel, not your preferred channel, but the customers, right? And they have the very best of our mature customers have this ability to hyper-personalize and do things at a granular level. They're moving to running one model per customer instead of one model that models all of your customers in a single time. So we're seeing that level of granularity continue to push down, and that's the power of data. So our mission at Teradata is to transform how organizations work and how people live through the power of data. And I think that's the exciting part for the next decade we're going to have is a tremendous opportunity to do this. So thank you for allowing me to kind of frame the conversation today. Now, I'll send it back to you, and we can start the conversation about what's going on in your organizations. Thanks much.
Thank you so much, Christopher. You've really done a brilliant level set and a context setting for us. So I don't need to launch into a preamble to, bring a context to this conversation and discussion that we will have. Some great points there, and we'll try to explore and understand with our panelists present here as to how far along this journey have they reached within their organization, and what are some of the challenges that they are facing in trying to attain a lot of these data-related endeavors. With that, I'd like to welcome our illustrious set of panelists. They are Manishi Chatterjee, GMIT IDBI Bank; Umesh Mittal, Group Head IT, Julius Baer Wealth Advisors, India; Somil Purani, DVP IT, Axis Bank; Ninad Raje, Director IT and CIO, Health Assure; Avdoot Parab, CIO, Parley Group; Sanjay Karnatak, CTDO, Star Union Daiichi Life Insurance Company; Prashant Deshpande, VP IT, Shriram Transport Finance; Mr. KRC Murthy, SVP IT, Kotak Mahindra Bank; Pankaj Bansal, CBO, Bank Bazaar; Ashish Desai, VP IT and CIO, Aditya Birla Group, Grasim Industries; Shweta Singh, Head Data Science, Tata AI Life Insurance; Sandeep Suryavanshi, CEO, Aid Expert; and Anirudh Kala, CEO, Sellable Tech. Gentlemen, thank you once again for participating in this discussion, and welcome to today's roundtable discussion. Mr. Chatterjee, I'd like to start off with you. Now, in his presentation, Chris spoke about this framework of, listen, understand, and act upon some of the insights that you can cull from the interactions that you have with the customer. So at IDBI Bank, banks are under a lot of pressure to provide intuitive, seamless experiences to their customers. How are you leveraging and adopting this framework of listening to the customers as they interact with the bank, understanding their financial needs, and what stage of life they are in for your products and offerings? How do you decide what service would be best for them, and how do you then act on providing a personalized message to them in the moment?
Thanks, Neha. And I will tell that first of all, Christopher, the way he has explained, it's a kind of journey which is, of course, every bank and every institution will try to achieve, because that's the objective finally. But when we actually do it for the institution-wise, it's a challenges which each and every institution has at its own. So for a bank like us, which is having a legacy data, it's not an easy way to go for a kind of a experience which is hyper-personalized. So first of all, the base of the whole thing is the data, which has to be at a minimum level of accuracy. And for the then only it is possible, whatever plans, whatever things we do it, but it's not possible that unless and until I have my data pure, it's not the curative data, we cannot have it. So the first thing what in IDBI Bank, what we had it that we tried to have this, the data part of this to be at some level. So for that, like we had created some kind of a data governance architecture. So and then we had actually classified as per the nomenclature of the data governance, what are the things to be that in a trajectory which is going to lead me to that kind of an environment where my data should be at least the sanitized. At least the data cannot be addressed by each and anyone in the bank that, okay, this data has to be like this, or somebody will say this has to be this. There has to be a policy, there has to be a classification, and there has to be a data governance council who is going to act on that. So that is the one thing we did it at our bank, which is of course a very niche area nowadays. Second thing is we already, for that customer experience, we already have our data warehouse in the journey, wherein we, the data, as if like, your listening part, what we say, it's a different source of the data. what are the different source, and from that data is getting it, and then the analyzing and then creating that data mart and coming to the customers through CRM kind of environment. Incidentally, we have Teradata appliance in our bank only. So that's actually the source for the whole data provider. So then the customer CRM model which we had actually implemented, that's the a front end for my customer level experience, and that is going to have, that is having all the data which is culled out from the different appliance, the cross sell part, the campaigning part, and everything. But I will say that the behavioral part and the analytics part, which is the next level, that is something which are on the journey. So that is going to be achieved when we are actually those segmentation model and all these models we are thoroughly, it's tested and we implemented it. From the customer experience level, whatever we had achieved so far, it's something which is as a hyper personalized or as a particular customer's need wise or their choice wise, that campaign that's yet to take place, because that needs some kind of a work on the data. So of course we are on the journey, we are there, we are sufficing to the need of the customer to at least to the level where they are minimum they are getting satisfied. The next is a journey that we feel that we will able to achieve.
Right. So, Mr. Chatterjee, you gave us a very pragmatic view of what's really happening within your organization. Also, your stepwise action plan that you have adopted to reach a certain level of data maturity. I'd like to take it to Mr. Murthy now. Mr. Murthy, while you are trying to adopt this framework of listen, understand, and act, what are some of the fundamental issues you are wrestling with? How are you trying to wrap your arms around it? How are you dealing with challenges of data governance, data management, data integrity, maintaining the hygiene of data? How are you trying to get all of that together to then help you get ahead in this journey?
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I think the journey started for us, a few years back. The data is the source, the right data actually. So for us, it comes from various applications, various sources, and we have so many arms, within the bank, right? So culmination of all the data. So what we created is one data warehouse and a data lake kind of thing, and that's the single source of your, reports. So there is strict governance out there, because what happens is, I always keep saying, right? If you don't use your data right. So basically, the left doesn't talk to the right, and you are actually actually selling a basic credit card. You're calling a client and say, "I'll give you a basic credit card." The client turns around and says, "Hey guy, do you know I'm a private wealth client for you? You know what kind of relationship I have, and you're selling me this card." So it's a stupid thing to happen. It's the entire organization falls flat because of such inconsistencies of data between the internal units itself. So it is very important that you have one single view across all the businesses, and the same language is spoken across all the clients, right? You actually need to know your clients well, what to actually, as you rightly said, you have to design it as per the client's requirements, proactively go what actually the clients require. It's a journey. If someone says there, I've attained there, I'm there and I've done it, I don't know, I'll give kudos, but it's a journey, right? And the important thing is, today the data becomes stale very quickly. It's not that I have the data once and I can use it for years together. The data you have today, in a month or 2 months, it can change. The entire profile of the client changes. So you'll have to keep updating it. You'll have to refresh the data and ensure that you have the updated view also. That is this the client in the same business? Is the client having the same kind of profile now? The appetite has changed, or it has increased or decreased. It's very important to be on the toes, use your right data at the right intervals, and culminate all the data for your benefit of the business. So I would say that it's a very hard pressed thing. It's a topic by itself. We can go hours and days and months together talking about it, but I think the governance is very important.
Right. Any steps that you've taken specifically to address some of the challenges that you spoke about?
That's what I said. We culminate all the data at one place. We we clean up the data and get the output, the right data, in the right output, then give the data to our end, the service managers or the feet on the street guys. That this is the data you need to actually go out and get the customers view of it,
Right.
what's their requirement, etc. So it's like
That's the base level
that's the
requirement.
base level which you have
Correct.
to work. So that's where we are working on. There will be some differences here and there that keeps happening, but try to achieve it like at least 98-99% you are there.
Okay. Right. Now, Mr. Somit, he raised this valid point on, the base level requirement that the right data has to be in the hands of the right people so that they can reach out to the customers with the right questions and get the right answers. So how are you dealing with that challenge within your bank?
So few challenges still exist. There is no second thought on it. Data hydration, what KRC was talking about, that is still a challenge because, see, you look at different customer segments. So we have customers who are 40 years with a bank, who are very new. Everybody's digital journey is different. There are people who are spending on digital platforms. There are people who are still going traditional way. So we still don't have a complete customer mapping done as an end-to-end because of the various customer segments what we deal with. That is one thing. Another thing is governance framework is already in place. Okay, but the refresh rate has to change. Even the risk engines have to change because we have to continuously analyze and understand what would be the risk profile of a customer before we try and map any product or any service to that particular customer. That is another set of challenge which is there. But again, the checks and balances are in place to see how we can collate the data and how well we can use it. Different channels are also created, but yet interrelating all the channels, even though we are feeding everything to the data warehouse, still a single pane of glass is something which is a wish list.
Right. Okay. Now, Shweta, an organization's brand is a story unfolding across all its customer touch points. How do you then tap into the insights that you get from all the touch points, customer touch points, to then be able to, get close to, providing those moments of truth and, that a differential customer experience?
Sure. Thanks, Neha. I think to begin with, first of all, thank you, Christopher. It was really good to see your presentation from the lens you really talked about fraud, because a lot of time we look at a lot of digital ecosystem data availability more from the customer acquisition and various things which are the primary objectives, and we may not have thought about it as comprehensively on this aspect, and possibly I'd like to connect with you after this forum. But coming back to your question, Sneha, so for our organization and the way we sort of look into it, that we sort of centralized everything about data into one unit. That's the central data office that we have, and and therefore we have the chief data officer as a role that I look after, and all aspects of data. So data governance and data quality, because that's a journey to improvise upon. Customer value management in terms of integrating the aspect that the fundamental backend of maintaining data is also something which will add value as a top line, that as a unit. Moving on to advanced analytics, which is where a lot of us are working, a lot of models across the organization, but then what really is the value impact and how much are you really harnessing data across the several touch points. The entire piece on every single data being measured, metrics, etc., as the whole piece, and then bringing in this element of doing things differently under a caveat called innovation. We've sort of put all of these verticals under the one umbrella shop of central data office. This kind of a structuring sort of makes sure that every aspect of data is looked into, from being the fundamental layers to the operational layers to some of the more forthcoming techniques, tools, platforms one is evaluating into to keep pace with what is changing around you. So that's the basic fundamental construct that we have created. This construct helps ensure that the single objective of what data can bring to organization is looked into more comprehensive across the organization. And the unit therefore drives it across the other functional or business units in the organization for all aspects of what is and can be done with data. connecting data points which we have, whether from the digital ecosystem or our service touch points or the traditional backend data that we may have, and then moving on to external data sets is all under one shop to look into, explore, and sort of move forward. It helps you create better value. When we talk about customer value management, existing or new, it talks about building better models which are more refined because you're synchronizing everything into one team and one piece to deliver. And of course, ensuring that your own path, and as we heard, right, we have these challenges of data being clean, data being good, and then measuring the data part of it. So we've sort of moved into those directions. So we sort of bring it all together. We ensure that all of us sits together and moving into one place to give a certain value add. And that's how the whole unit is pretty stitched for us. So yes, structurally, that's something which we are trying to look into. But I think there are challenges of things being part of it being manual, etc., which of course is a journey for all of us to cover. But that's how we are trying to look into bringing in all elements of data and the information available across internal and external ecosystems together to sort of value add in the various aspects of it.
Okay. Could you state any instances of how you've attained some benefits from your data-led efforts?
Sure. So we have clear, defined numbers to deliver, and that's what really drives the ownership to keep improvising on what you're doing. So, for example, a lot of models that we will deliver would be measuring a value impact, top line or bottom line, statively as a target in the beginning of the year, and delivered and measured. Similarly, when we try to do customer value management, where we are trying to understand how to and what to really go back and sell more depending on how you serviced him, what life stages the consumers in, everything it goes about in segmentation models, has a target that we look at delivering for the year, and we seem to be doing pretty fine. So it's measurable values that we are responsible to drive across the entire set of the cross-sell and the leads and everything else that we sort of manage in the team, and the models that we build, whatever models, whether it's for onboarding or whether it's on the conservation or it's on cross-sell. So there is a value number which we deliver, and we are measured on that. Okay. That keeps everybody going.
That's wonderful. Now, Mr. Deshpande, your segment is very different. Used vehicle consumers and also the senior citizens. How are you tapping into data within your organization to then be able to provide, like she mentioned, business impact, and metrics that can then be proven to the management?
Thank you. Good evening, Gaur. So as you rightly mentioned, when we talk about data, and you take the segments of the bank specifically, and the segment we always talk one what we have and one with what we can get. Okay. The problem with us is that we have the only data what we have. We cannot fetch anything. So if you ask my flavor of customer, I'll say 70 to 80% of those customers you will not find them in bureau. Okay, as the segment is used vehicle and these are truck drivers. Okay, sometime having a KYC itself become a challenge for them. Okay, and then the second part is the senior citizens again. Okay, again senior citizens, they have the past experience or the past records, everything, but that cannot be considered now, because now either they are they cross 70, 80 and something, and then even what we have, we cannot do a lot of cross selling for them. Okay, they are a deposit customer. So how we do is that, yes, we do have a data warehouse and data lake with us, but the challenge again is is that how to connect to them. Like when you have data, then yes, like Christopher mentioned about the hyper personalization, they give experience to them. Okay, now how to give that experience to the end user and then to my feet on street guy. Okay, how much we have, how much we can share with them. Okay, it becomes a challenge, because then we don't want just to increase the customer touch and then things goes totally different. Second example I would just like to give is that we are not considering the only data with what our customers are having. We also need to consider the entire ecosystem.
Right.
Okay. So when we say the ecosystem is that We have tied up with almost all the fuel stations in the country, all the fuel service providers in the country. We have tied up with all the tire manufacturers as we are in the truck vehicle. We have tied up with all the toll posts available in the thing. So yes, we do have a challenge that how to link those things, everything to our truck drivers. That like what is the kilometer he traveled, what are the different working capital loans we can provide to them. Okay, we have reached a level where proactively we recommend the customer that yes, your vehicle traveled this many kilometer, now it's time to change your tires, it's time to because insurance comparatively what we give is a comparatively easy, that we have expiry date and we can say that your experience is getting expired, go for a renewal. But when it comes to the other working capital loan like tire, the fuel or something, we are struggling over there because the data readily is not available where I can upfront say a customer, okay, please change your tire, it's a time to relook at your engine, it's time to reload your toll tag, fast tags and all those things. What Christopher told is a dream for us, we are definitely looking at it, but then at the same time the challenge what others are facing, how much data we have is what we are working at.
Right. Interesting points there. And Christopher, I'd like to come back to you with some of the challenges that are being discussed here. Mr. Karnatak, how are you leveraging data for the customer lifecycle management given the industry that you're in? How are you leveraging data there?
So, one is that we started this journey a few years back and by creating a single view of the customer from a data point of view, and so some kind of a data mart which is created, and we tried at that point in time to put in all possible data which we have about the customer in that data mart. Of course, as Murthy was saying, that things change, right? I mean, new channels of communication get added, but yeah, this is a journey that we keep on enriching that data too. So from there we have of course, just having the data is of no use, as Christopher was telling. We have to take some actions against it. So surfacing it in our CRM, so that during the servicing or outreach to the customer from a renewal standpoint, those data points are available to the agents who are calling him or somebody who's meeting him. So that way we are using, and that has given good results there in terms of when you're talking to the customer, if you have all the background about his prior communications, his all the policies are listed in front of you, then you have a different conversation with him, right? So we're using and post that apart from this transactional interaction which could be enriched, analytics on top of. So that we have been now past 2 to 3 years doing exhaustive analytics journey. Started small. Now we have matured to quite an extent there in terms of various types of models, be it renewal or being fraud propensities, or now the analytics scope is increasing. Now we are getting into domains of like sales attrition data analytics, right? So HR is coming back asking for those kind of. So first of all, creating those repositories, because earlier I talked about only customer single view. Now looks like there has to be an employee single view also, right? So then only these kind of analytics can come in. Not easy. We are trying, but I'm sure we'll reach there, but it takes time to enrich that data. So what we what the challenge which we face typically is also, we in our organization typically we have two types of data. One, we have some government policies, PMJJ, BY policies sold. There the data quality is not that great. So enrichment of data, through bureaus, through various other means, is also a task which we have now taken up, trying to, because then only we can leverage that large volume of data which we have. And then analytics on those kind of data sets to cross sell them. Once they have bought one policy, but can we cross sell? Can we identify those segments of customer who we can cross sell something else? So that effort is going on, and so I think in various areas analytics is definitely getting a big boost because of this data. And as I said earlier, increasing the customer satisfaction, customers understanding while their interactions. This is another way of using that data set.
Right. So interesting points there. Now, some of these challenges that you've discussed are pretty much the challenges that most organizations face when it comes to customer segmentation, being able to then decipher which segments can you cross-sell to, upsell to, and come to them with specialized offerings that they would require. Right. Now, Mr. Bansal, your business model is data is the very soil on which your business model sprouts. So, how are you leveraging data? What are some of the areas in which you're leveraging data, and what are some of these? What are some of the accomplishments that you've had in those areas with the use of data?
So, thank you, Sneha. I think the key element what we have figured out as a fintech, right? So basically, we are in the field where data is for us is the one, right? So what we do is like first and foremost is customer experience is the key goal, right? Data is it's secondary. So when you look at customer experience, what do you need? You know, if I have to interact with the customer today, I interact digital. There is no physical interaction. We see it's pure digital. And I would say in the last 3 years, I would say starting 2019 to 2022, journey has been prolific in the country. Regulator has come back with so much, in terms of EKYCs, CKYCs, and video KYC. It's a huge data that is piling up in the country. So what we have figured out is that one, the customer experience to be seamless. As that's important. I don't have. It's a 40-second, 50-second interaction. You can see
no frictions,
right? It has to be a perfection through which you look at data. So what we do normally with data is that we create a value. The value gets created when you look at surrogates which a customer can be given without any intervention from the customer, right from the source. So the great news is that the country is developing towards that economy. It's a pure economy. The infra is getting created. From a acquisition, fulfillment standpoint, I think the rails are there now. You look at UPIs, you look at any country which has never done these kind of transactions and nobody has seen it, right? So we believe this is going to be the big game changer, which has already started happening. The number of transactions you do, the number of data points that you store, the cloud that you face. Today, if I do a video KYC, the cloud has to be like AWS is like you need to be there. Google has to be there. So I think that is changing the landscape, how we store data also. It's not going to be physical, it has to be digital, even the storage. Right. Retrieval has to be there within a second, which obviously a party like a bank would always store data at his own end. I would not be allowed to store. So there are challenges, there are debates going on in the country. But the great news what we see is that if I do create value for a consumer through data, it will convert into an experience which will convert into unit economics. That's the way it gets structured. There is no other way. You can create a data first and then you can create an experience. No, you have to create an experience first and the data will get created overall. So I think this is how we have been structured our business. We give an experience. I don't want a data. I don't want anything from customer. It has to be a 1-minute checkout, period. So this is how we start. Then the data comes. What data do you need?
So ease of use and frictionless experience is what you are aiming for, and that's when you think the customers.
Right? You are 25 to 40 years of people who are transacting, who are on the smartphone, who are there on the economy, right? These guys are going to grow, right? So this is happening very, very fast. Today, the next billion, Google is talking about next billion. Everybody is talking about next billion. How do you look at those consumers? Those consumers are very, very finicky, right? I'll tell you, the entire dynamics have changed. You used to look at, when we used to do a business, we used to look at 4 P's. Today we look at 4 A's. It's anytime, anywhere, anyone, and anything. So you can come at 12 o'clock in the night, transact. I don't need a bank to be open, right, at 4 o'clock in the night. I can transact still because it's there. So you need data. You need the perfection that you have to build in at that particular time to give that same customer experience at 4 o'clock in the night also. And this can only happen through data amplification that happens. So that's what we have created. We have segregated data on our side. We have huge data that we manage at our side, and that gives an experience. So that's what we've been doing in terms of creating value-added products, which you don't need any kind of trail with documentation. You don't need a KYC physically to be done. There are ways and means of doing it. So I think that's what we have created, Sneha, and it is doing pretty well. And the way things are growing right now, I think next 5 years is like, I think we will be the largest economy. Fintechs will be number 3. I think the next 5 years we will be number 2. The way the things are moving, look at, I would say, the funding part in the country is like, I never seen the growth in the last 10, 15 years of existence of this particular thing. So I think that's all adding up. It will be a big market. Data will be a great market in the country. We have already seen how we're creating that data value add for the customers.
Right. Mr. Suryavanshi, could you talk about some of your data efforts that you've made within your organization, the results that you're seeing?
So I think I'm on the other side of the table for this, because I've been a CIO of many organizations like Zensar, etc. But now we provide digital strategy services, and I think one of the challenges that we're seeing is that being able to integrate internal and external data and providing a great customer experience still remains
A challenge.
a lot of people said dream, So that's been really a major challenge so far, and being able to use, the goal is there. I think people understand, and I think like Pankaj mentioned, we are at the right moment in the time where more than any other countries, we are well positioned to bring in digital data, and the digital economy growing very fast. But using different AI models to really achieve that CX, it's going to happen probably in the next 2-3 years itself. So we need to be ready for that, and that's what we are seeing in many of our customer engagements that we are seeing. So it's a great time to be here, and I'm hoping that Teradata kind of companies can really help us get there.
Right. Now, Mr. Rajay, data underpins a lot of the things that you do across your value chain at Health Assured. How are you leveraging deeper analytics to, then be able to provide better customer experience, frictionless, ease of use, timely, create moments of truth for customers?
So thanks, Neha, and thanks for ETCIO for having us in this particular conversation. Very interesting conversation, and thanks, Chris, for setting up the entire stage here. Lovely presentation. And to my fellow colleagues here, I think pretty good insights. So we coming from the healthcare spectrum, it's pretty large ecosystem, right? And the way we kind of sort of talk about and look at the data is we do not see it as challenges. We always see it as opportunities, right? And there's opportunities galore everywhere. So we are in the industry, other way in the business of keeping people alive and keeping people healthy as well at the same time, right? When that is something which is really, really big, if you really ask me. It's not something about financial, it's about health.
It's about lives.
Right. So how does one do that? I mean, how do people, we keep people healthy, alive and kicking and so on and so forth, right? So I just want to take a step back, even before getting into the listening mode, into the understanding and the final act mode, which is pretty interesting. We actually looked at what needs to be captured in the first place, right? Because that is the base of the entire pyramid, right? If you really ask me. Once you decide and understand and determine what needs to be captured, thereon you work, and that's exactly what we started on. So the premise that we started on was, let us understand first what we need to capture.
So the intentional collection of data and prioritization.
Exactly. So there is intentional and there is unintentional also. Because I'll give an example. Now, from the health standpoint, there's gazillion streams of data coming into us in terms of through wearable devices, through digital interfaces, through physical capture of data at the source itself, and so on and so forth. So how does one manage this? And what kind of data needs to be captured? So when we actually decided what needs to be captured, then it is unstructured data also we need to be very careful about. Because a data stream is coming in, we can't just avoid that, we can't just ignore it. And since we're talking about opportunities, we said there is opportunity here as well. Then on, we started about making sure that where does the data get stored, what kind of structures, what kind of leveraging of tools, and so on and so forth, what kind of analytics. So then we got into the health lake concept, because as you have the data marts as well, right, we got into the health lake concept. And of course, AWS comes into picture. They have a very nice tool there. However, so we then deployed and employed a lot of data scientists, because we're into healthcare. There's medical oriented people also, medically skilled people. So we mine that data in that case, right? So once we started mining the data, it provided us insights. And then those insights turn into knowledge. And the knowledge then turns into certain things, which is business, right? So then how do we leverage that knowledge to kind of turn it up onto this business cases as such? I'll give an example here. And somebody pointed out, I think Murthy also pointed out change, right? We're constantly in a change, in a flux of change, So, but however, in our case, we have to manage and maintain data for years and years and years. And the reason behind this is, if you're talking about keeping a person healthy and alive, then we have to go back in time and understand this particular person, how it is trending, what was his heart rate probably 3 years back, and how is it now, what kind of medicines, what kind of meds is kind of getting administered. So then we actually create a persona of this particular person, right? When I talk about persona, it's all about the health trends, lifestyle, meds, what kind of travel he is kind of going through, and he or she is going through, and so on and so forth. So based on that, a persona is created, and then you present that persona to the particular person, right? Saying that this is your persona. 3 years back, you were having this. Now, because of these interventions, you're at this particular level. But you know what? You need to also go beyond this. And if you do this, then probably you'll be healthy. So that's the kind of journey that we have gone through. It's no more about something which is like a credit card or a financial information, or probably 4-5 realms of data here. There is like hundreds and thousands of realms of data that we and
constantly changing as well.
Yeah, it keeps changing. It is dynamic, and it is real time. Real time. So we've also got into something which is we're helping people to understand if they are susceptible to cardiac arrests even before it happens, right? And how do we communicate? How do we inform them beforehand? And that is something which we are now getting into, and that's very. And that's where the AI and ML comes into picture. We're kind of trying to get this our hands together in AI, and that is entire thing is based on data. So data becomes the core, as we all know, but it is important how to utilize the data, how to deploy the data, to understand also, and then finally obviously to act, like Chris mentioned in his presentation. So it's all about opportunities for us, and that's
right. Interesting use cases, and also with a lot of goodness in them. Right now, Mr. Mittal, you're from the wealth management sector, wealth advisory. This is where you collect a lot of data, and then your customers are also very specialized segments. How do you go about it, providing a better experience? Because those customers would vote with their feet if they don't get one.
So I'll give you a context. So, for example, an ultra HNI having, say, 200 crores of wealth portfolio would need something different in terms of viewing his portfolio at 3:30 when the market closes, and the same guy who's checking his portfolio at 10:30 in the evening would probably seek some other kind of information. So to set up this context, you don't need to churn lots of data. But as Ninad mentioned, for us as a IT heads or CIOs, it's an opportunity, and there's a hell lot of technologies available to do all of these things. But what challenges us is probably the culture of the organization, the legacy of the organization, the talent pool that an organization can create. So all of these are challenges, and I'll give you with an example. Julius Baer is a Swiss bank. We are among the top 10 wealth managers of the country, of the world. Since it's a Swiss organization, they have a legacy of maintaining secrecy and doing business in a secret way. So if I am an RM of, and we are present in more than 60 countries, if I'm an RM of, say, India, and if I would like to travel to offshore, as an IT head, I need to provide my organization an ability that this RM should not be able to view his client's portfolio when he's offshore. So say if I'm traveling Dubai or say any other country, I should not be able to access my own client's portfolio. This is the kind of legacy they are carrying. But at the same time, with the fluidity of data and technologies and the landscape of business changing, you need to change your mindset. So unless this mindset changes, it is very tough for an IT guy to implement all of the newer technologies. I see more of opportunity. It is the mindset of the organization that needs to be changed,
Right.
or the cultural issues or adaptability issues. So Julius Baer principally never went on cloud. So telling them to adapt, event streaming data or anything of that sort and store them on cloud and make out contextual information out of it becomes crazy, because you will have to deploy things on premises. Then there are separate challenges of scales of economies are not there and all of those things. But all said and done, I think in today's world, technologically everything is available. It's just the stitching of the solution based on the context of organizational maturity is the real challenge.
Right. That's a very valid point, and I'd like to take it to Mr. Desai. Mr. Desai, he raised a very fundamental point on if change has to happen, it has to be steeped into the organizational culture. There are functional silos, data silos within every organization, but those need to be broken on if we need to have that contextualized decision making that we are all talking through data. How are you dealing with that challenge within your organization, and what have you done to foster that culture of data intelligence within the company?
So, rightly mentioned by Umesh, it's more of a culture issue. We are a 75-year-old, I would say, manufacturing organization. Many of our data are still in this legacy systems. We do not have a, I would say, basic. Earlier, we did not have a system to capture the data as well. But what we have done in last 3 years, we have created a separate function who focuses more on this digital and analytics. We have tried to create 3 different layers of champions. So we have tried to create a digital champions in each of our business who have been trained into the digital technologies, be it let's say AI, ML. We take them through a rigorous training of around 6 months. We are also having the separate training program for the senior leadership as well, wherein they have been taken through what is possible using the different technologies. And at the same point of time, we are also taking some baby steps in different functions. To give an example, in our manufacturing business, we have done something in logistics, where now we are able to see what is happening across our manufacturing plant, how the safety is getting embedded into our driver in our transportation. Based on this data, now we are trying to leverage into the freight part of it. How can we use this data to reduce freight costs? We are taking some baby steps in the area of AI as well, wherein we are trying to say that how can we use AI for quality. We are creating some small use cases and then create this as a POC, I would say, concept which can be replicated across the business. Our objective is that create something in a business and try to replicate into the group. Okay. Another example which I would say is that, again, supply chain resiliency is one of the major things which we have seen in the last 2 years. We have seen that, okay, how can we use the data to predict the freight, to predict the pricing of a certain finished goods in the raw material. We had a success in 2 products and now we are trying to replicate across the products as well. So the way in which we are trying to do is build the skills within the organization, do some small POCs and then replicate across the group.
Okay. Now, Mr. Parav, how are you, as an FMCG major, how are you leveraging data to understand, to identify the consumption patterns, the spending patterns of customers? How do you see the churn happening? How do you make sure that you are able to increase the cart share for your products?
Okay, thanks, Neha. I think a lot of inputs are coming on. First, let me talk about we don't have customer at one level. So we have a primary customer, we have a secondary
distributor,
and also the consumer cap. So there are layers of customers. So you don't have one approach to be applied for all the customers. Now that brings the challenge that not everything is your primary data. Your large amount is a secondary data, and then you can't trust the data as a pure data. So, and we are taking the decision on that data as well. What we are primary is how do we profile the customer is something which we already have, not I would say refined one, but quite in a cluster way.
second area where we look into is a net promoter score. That's one area where we can see how I can move a lower net promoter score to a higher number, so that at least I capture their pocket and get into it. So, and now when we go back in the reverse way from consumer to a primary, which is more of a, how do I increase or reaching them? That's where we focus more on a tiny and micro level data, more on the demography part of it. We are not there. We listen a little bit of our own internal models which we have done it, but not to that sophisticated level. But we have seen largely applying some of the models with NPS approach. We are being able to fairly increase, how it is impact on our turnover is what we measure in the reverse way, while coming from the consumer to our primary thing. The reverse way we are also looking at is how do I ensure that with so many channels which we are using, whether it is retail, whether it is we are present everywhere, whether it is defense, canteen, or normal hotels or kind of thing. We measure every channel in a way where and we compare ourselves with our, of course, the competitors, and there we try and see whether we can again go back to what the models here. I may not be able to share what we are exactly doing it in a way, but largely we are working on a 3-dimension. We are modeling many of the areas of customer focus. We do use NPS, and analytics of course comes in. These 3 areas we are focusing on to see. But the big challenge which we are facing here is, as mentioned by cultural challenge. Many a pattern which we receive through our model is unknown patterns, and not necessarily the marketing salespeople trust and accept those models, because many of the unknown patterns which may signal you a revenue upside, but they are not taken at the face value. And this will take some time for us to also accept and move forward to get into a more exponential growth. Because today, let's say we are growing at 45%. We still feel that what we're doing is right, but the potential could be much more rather. Because the kind of brand promotion, brand penetration we have I think we should still do much better. So these are some of the challenge: cultural side telling, trusting the data, and refining our way of going towards the approach of what we are doing it, bringing more and more AI model. I think as we see both sides, opportunity, changing the way people embrace the data and accept it is something we look forward as a change for us.
Now, Christopher, you heard the views of all the gentlemen and the lady present here, the challenges that they discussed, the opportunities that they see within their business context. Now, Teradata is often credited as one of the companies that helped invent the concept of big data. So how do you think you can help them operationalize the data and then come up with timely, effective, efficient solutions? And what would you have to say to some of the challenges that they have?
It's fascinating listening to the leadership in data, that we have in this room, and the different perspectives and the different industries that are maybe different places in the maturity curves. What I see is opportunity everywhere, right? That we have barely begun to tap what's possible, right? So whether it's big data or curated data or whatever it is, right? There's an opportunity to take that and to apply it to our businesses, make better decisions, do it in context, right? But more importantly, as we were hearing, build this culture of data, right? That it's not just a few analysts who understand it, a few data scientists who can deal with it, a few models that nobody can explain that really, give a fantastic insight. But it's executives who understand the art of the possible. It's the companies who can look at this and say, this isn't just an asset, right? The data itself is important, but it's how you leverage that asset and apply it and put value around it. We heard, Shweta talk about customer value management, right? Customer value management is huge and rarely done well, right? Because it's hard. right? These problems are intractable. They've been intractable for many, many years because they aren't easy to solve. That's why the fintechs are coming up and disrupting industries. It's why every one of us has to look at what we're doing and say, how do we step up and be the disruptor? And customer value management, where you have to understand what is the sense of profitability. It's pretty easy to know where the revenue comes from. It's very hard to figure out what do you do with the indirect expense and how do you actually know which customers are truly profitable or not, and which ones are likely to be profitable for you in the future, right? As you begin to look across things, it's that notion of looking forward, looking to the future. That's the possibility. So every one of us, as we kind of go forward in our, our processes and all the things we're doing, all I would say is keep going down the pathway. Don't give up on data. Don't give up on analytics. Don't worry that it's hard. Tackle something that is bite-sized for your organization and start down the pathway. So we're here to help, right? We have a lot of, expertise. We work with a lot of the leading organizations around the world. One of the things that we find is the specific way you implement it. That's your secret sauce. How it's done and what needs to be done is actually something that we can share that knowledge across, and we can standardize it, and we can help you accelerate that process. So there are people here who can help you. And I said, I think, ultimately what we want is a better customer experience. That's what I want as a consumer, right? And I think everybody, nobody wants to make a bad experience, right? So we all just need to figure out how we can get there faster. So thank you, Sneha. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys today.
Thank you. You don't want to do a second round of questions?
I'm
We'll close it at that?
sorry, I don't know what our timing is, but we're.
Yes.
Do we have time?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to throw a question. See, one of the things that all of us talked about is that the culture change obviously is a huge challenge, but within what is under a little bit under our control as CIOs, is that building that experimentation cycle and focusing on monetization.
Fail fast.
Yeah, fail fast, and again, because one is creating that whole data of good quality into one, and that I think a lot of us have taken strides in. We're there yet almost. But the point of the pudding is that what benefit did you deliver? I mean, I'm really interested in Ninad's case that, how is the help? I mean, is my phone telling you something which, could you benefit? So those are the things. Yes. But within all of our businesses, what are the challenges we're facing in building that experimentation cycle? Any thoughts on that? That would be really great. Because we see that is the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. That are we quantifying benefits very clearly? And are we being able to build that experimentation cycle successfully?
I think that would be at a very early stage because monetization would be the final leg of your entire exercise. But I think we are yet to mature in terms of the data management, data quality, data governance. Okay. There are a lot of many things which comes into prior to that. I think that is where some maturity is, as in
monetization may not always be possible. I was giving you an example of that guy who's checking his portfolio at 3:30 would look at some different. So what we do is we are given a feed wall kind of a section within our app, which does digitization of information based on the actions that have happened in the portfolio during the day. So if a guy is checking at 3:30, he would probably be looking at something which is related to the market movements. And if we can pull up that data and show them in the form of widgets on this feed wall. One is the static side of his portfolio, which is fixed and transactional and servicing side of it. But this feed wall or a fluid, page of the app would, fetch out that data, which is very contextual. So for example, at 3:30, he'll be seeing something related to the market movements. But at 10:30 in the night, he would see something on the asset or the liability side of his balance sheet.
Right.
So
or forecasting.
And that could also be related to some news because all of these are ultra HNI clients on their personal or on their personal front or on their official front. And if I could, fetch out that information and make it some
Interesting.
contextual, pushing of data, and that's where the micro personification within that person's psyche at different contexts or times is where we use that data. But whether we'll be able to monetize it, maybe no.
Why I said that is because I think, see, we have a very strong, in India especially, a very strong startup ecosystem. And these guys focus on one problem. And they have to make money from that solution. Otherwise, they're not going to live, right? So, to an extent, we are all very large organizations, but having that learning from there, and we work also with, I personally work with a lot of startups. So, they kind of are, ultra focused on one problem and make money out of it. If they don't work, then they're dead. They're done. Yeah. So, for us, bringing in that learning from there, that how do we focus on one problem and make money out of that? We've got hundreds of options.
So asking the right questions of the data.
Asking the right question and focusing dead center on that benefit that I'm going to deliver and then being able to do it. Again, it doesn't even start without you having that basic data mart, data lakes there. That's there.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, I think the use cases build up. And that's what I'm saying, experimentation cycle. If you are able to do that, then you will be able to sell to our senior management much better.
But at least we need some kind of maturity. Only
Yeah,
then it will be possible.
I mean, that's what I said. Basic data nahi hai, to then nothing is there.
Another example. So if a person's phone battery is below 20%, then he would not like to see red colors in his portfolio. Can you show him green? All the, so say if you have 15-20 stocks in a portfolio, can I show him what stocks have moved up and not the ones which have went down? So these are some of the contexts that will not get with the raw, just pushing the data.
And just to add on to this as well, I mean, if I may, since you spoke about how he spoke about monetization, you also spoke about apart from culture and all that stuff, and you also spoke about certain personalization. Chris highlighted about the hyper personalization. I'll give you an example of hyper personalization as well, especially from the healthcare standpoint. So one is the personalization, which is, okay, I want to know what is my health, okay, what is my pulse, okay, how do I manage myself in my lifestyle, day-to-day routines, and so on and so forth. But if somebody really wants to get into the hyper personalization mode, I know I'm diabetic, I know I'm hypertensive, I'm very highly stressed, I have certain condition and so on and so forth. So I would want to know and understand exactly anything and everything about that particular condition. I don't want to understand about cardiac arrest. I don't want to understand something which
like
is
he mentioned,
not relevant.
Specific individual
Not
requirements.
relevant. So that's where the context comes into picture, and that's where the hyper personalization comes into picture. So if I'm able to showcase to that person what he needs at the point in time that he or she needs, that is the value that we can bring in. That is the benefit that we'll give in. And that is where the monetization also comes into picture at some point in time. Yes, we may want to monetize it. We may not want to monetize it. But if somebody is in a commercial business, obviously everybody wants to kind of get to the monetization mode as well.
You can focus on NPS being higher.
Exactly.
If nothing else.
Now, to his point also, NPS, he did mention Net Promoter Score. I think Doctor mentioned that. So we use NPS left, right, and center within our organization as such. And everybody uses. Google uses it, Apple uses it, right? At some point in time when we started, in early days, our NPS was really abysmal. Abysmal in the sense it was like probably -10, to be very, very honest. Today, after like 3-4 years of toil, efforts, getting into data, mining, hyper personalization, and trying to understand the feedback and experience of the customers, being with the customer, the listening more also, understanding them as well, and acting upon it. Today, we're sitting at 92%. Right? And that's a lot. So that is a journey that we have traversed across the number of years, and this is not something which is very, very normal. This is something which comes after long toil, efforts, understanding the customers, being with them, hearing them, listening to them, and provide them what they want at the time that they want. Yes, they might be wanting something, but not at the specific time that they want. Example is, if you're giving, say for example, I don't know, Chris, if he wants to go for a movie, right? But if I give a movie ticket to him on a platter, probably on a work day at around 2 o'clock dead in the afternoon, it's of no use to him, right? Whereas if I give the same movie tickets to him and along with his probably his wife and all on a weekend, on a Saturday or a Friday, 8 o'clock in the night, yes, he will kind of be very happy, and that's where the contextual thing comes into picture, right? So give the customers what they want, when they need it, and that is the value that we'll sort of create. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And in today's day and world, look at Blinkit. I mean, this is an example. I mean, amazing. I mean, we spoke about Zomato, we talk about Swiggy and all. Look at Blinkit, where it has come. Within 10 minutes, they deliver. Zomato and Swiggy says half an hour, 20 minutes will deliver. Blinkit is delivering it in 10 minutes now. So it's now getting into those, not forget about the hours, it's getting into minutes, it's getting into seconds now. And that is what the expectations that the customers have. And on the digital interface, obviously, I mean, they want quick and dirty and then it's done. They don't want to kind of hang around there. That's exactly what the contextual sense is.
I think that is quick and dirty is also important. You know?
Exactly.
Are you delivering value very quickly? You know?
Right.
90% corrected. There are no issues. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And nobody has time to delve into all those things, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure Murthy will agree in terms of if somebody has to bank with any transaction, whether I want to know balance, whether I want to kind of open a new account, and I'm sure banks like Kotak and IDBI Bank, they have very nice interfaces, quick bank probably checks, whatever that is, right? So imagine if it takes hours and hours, we obviously shift to somebody else, and we kind of experience this day in, day out. Why do we bank with a certain bank? Because of ease. And she mentioned about ease. Somebody mentioned about frictionless experience, and that is where the customer experience comes into picture.
So when you look at your future roadmap, other than getting this data quality and everything around data, getting it right, what are some of the next generation trends that you're looking at? And I would also like your insights on this, on what are you seeing about in this area from an industry practitioner level. But a quick round from all of you. What are some of the things how are you looking at ML taking this journey forward? AI, I think you spoke about it. So if you could do a quick round.
Well, I'll just quickly take a stab and then probably we can go around the table here as well. Now, currently we are talking about certain reactive modes of communication, reactive modes of customer experience, right? If customer wants it, they have to ask for it and then we'll provide it, right? The next trend is forget about asking. They don't even want to ask. We need to know, and we should know beforehand what do they need. Examples are this entire IoT devices. Like you have refrigerator can talk to somebody in a digital interface saying, you know what, I know that a certain set of vegetables are required or fruits are required, and that is the consumption that that particular household has, right, over a period of time, or a week, and we quickly replenish it. You don't even have to order it. It just kind of sends across a message that, this crate of apple is required because we know the consumption pattern and so on and so forth, and it just gets delivered.
So the lifestyle convenience is building that.
It's no more about reactive. It is all about proactiveness. We do it before any order comes in. That's the next trend. At least that's the way I see it. I'm sure others would have their own thoughts.
Right, Mr. Mithil.
I mean, on hyper personalization, I mentioned about this contextual information dissemination. This comes out of AI, ML, and collecting data over a period of time, and we are using all sort of technologies to do these things. So,
Mr.
I think data focus has to be more because models will keep refining. It has to be a very, very contextual data. There's no point in just collecting a data for the sake of collecting.
So getting the basics
right. You should have an
right.
intended objective very clear, and with respect to that, your data should be well refined. And there should be a focus on the data, as Murthy said, it can't be older, and you can't keep storing it. That's my.
Right. Mr. Chatterjee, a lot of time of the data scientists and the data teams are spent on cleansing the data because a lot of processes are still manual. How do you see ML helping in that area, and how do you see it taking the journey forward?
For the data cleansing, of course, it's a big challenge because when I said that earlier also that data quality has to be the most important part. So that's we have developed some kind of a portal within that, wherein this has been launched overall to the branches on the day end, and it's being addressed by the branches, and this is going to be directly my core banking is getting rectified this data. So this particular thing, the data quality, it has to be addressed as often as possible, as soon as possible, because my real-time data, otherwise the analytics or the AI, whatever I can run it, if it is not addressed in a real, I mean, at least in a very speedy way, that will not be of any use. And second thing which I just wanted to say, that the kind of data which is now actually pushing into the system, look at this UPI, look at the other things, it's mind-boggling. So managing that data, that's itself again going to be a challenge. So now, and the cloud and AI ML,
and also managing the security around it.
Full security of the thing. These are the most challenging part, but we are going to face it in coming days. So cloud, as you know, that we are conservative. Bank-wide is a conservative. Regulators doesn't have any right now. Only they are coming up with some kind of a signals. So going ahead, keeping my data at least on my premise and cloud part as for the software as SaaS, we have to go with some kind of a model, hybrid model, wherein with security we can come out, manage the data, as well as we can utilize that also for a hyper personalized kind of a scenario. But in fact, Chris has also. So it's a very challenging and what to say, in a very enterprising area going to be in coming days.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, so just to add on the views, I think some of the trends which we really need to be careful and really build ourselves upon is, and carrying on to what we just heard from Manish, is, how do you reduce the ask of the consumer? In a world where he's getting things delivered online, the experience that he has on one set of his requirements, like for example, is what he expects. I mean, that's the millennial, trend that we are talking about. And for some of the more customary and traditional business, which have a slightly lengthier process to onboard, how do you lessen the ask from the consumer by being able to include everything else that you can know about him without asking him? And therefore, whether it's the bureaus or whether it's a lot of external, entities which can bring you that information which you don't need to ask him, and therefore be able to offer it upfront and reduce the ask in the journey itself is one of the most important things which I'm sure all of us are building upon. It's really important. It will require a lot of experimentation, as you rightly said, something we are also working with a lot of fintechs. I mean, crazy amount of fintechs. Now, the way to look at it is there are traditional things that we are doing and one can enhance, and the data monetization depending on industry and the maturities, which will set in and will give certain values. We have to have a lens to look at, saying there is an X amount of things that we may want to do, which is more on the experimentation, innovation side, like the fintechs we are working with. None of these may give us an instant result and big numbers to flash around and therefore keep continuing. But I think the way to look at it is that wherever we are able to get these successes and whatever we are experimenting with the external entities, so long as any part of your funnel or so long as any part of your experience or ease of doing business enhances and there is an uplift that comes in, I think that's the path to tread on and then keep building on it. Not everything will be successful on day one. It varies according to our individual industries. But I think that is the lens at least that we may want to look at it, saying something became better and then it's a one step to
Also,
really build upon.
the benchmark is then to reach a stage where you can create data-led products.
Correct. And you may not have everything resulting into a top line uplift suddenly in 1, 3, 4, 6 months. But so long as some part of your funnel is becoming better, is the way to look at it and really move forward to in our organization, saying, okay, something has changed. And then it's a journey. There is a lot happening and we need to really harness this external data sets. It is important.
I have a little different perspective to this, considering being large bank, right? Lot of focus is around data security. Another major concern is privacy. Right now, India is an open market. You talk to somebody, you will get the data, phone number, email address, house address. Somebody may even invite you for dinner. Okay. When that data regulation and privacy act comes into picture, the entire ballgame is going to change. The way we see and the way we want to innovate, we may not be able to do that 6 months, 8 months down the line. So how that market will shape after the regulation comes into picture, that is something which is, to wait and watch for. But yeah, still at this point in time, better to go ahead with the flow. Being a bank, we have our reservations, but fintech does not. So lot of partnership, lot of open APIs to consume services which somebody has already built. Why waste time? Just invest and move forward, consume. So probably that could be a hybrid way. What was being discussed earlier.
Right. Mr. Desai?
Yeah, just to add to what Tumil said. So we are a corporate. We are into all the businesses. So our wish list is to do the cross-sell upsell, and we are using the similar product in, I would say, Birla Capital as well. Right? How do we cross-sell upsell? And that's opportunity we have in the manufacturing business as well. We are into the textile in different segment. How do we ensure that the person who's buying a particular fabric or the garment, how can we take him to the different sets of garments? How can we use this data to sell during the birthdays or sell for the kids? That's a bit of challenge going forward. If you ask what we want to do in future, cross-sell, upsell. Now, customer segmentation, hyper-personalization is what we want to do. The technologies which are relevant for us as of now would be blockchain, data analytics, for the whatever the AI or data related projects which I mentioned. And yeah, blockchain, AI, ML, and something into this personalization, hyper-personalization is what we are looking into.
Okay. Mr. Murthy?
For me, what next, if you ask me, is two segments. One is two types of clients. Like one is the corporates and large conglomerates who deal with us. The second biggest thing is Gen X, which we are talking of. My new apps or new applications or anything will be dependent on what they want. That's the biggest consumer base.
Understanding that
which is
emerging
long-term.
customer segment.
They don't have patience. They don't have loyalty like we do have with some banks and all. It doesn't take them seconds to switch over. If the application which you build doesn't work for a couple of minutes, they don't have any.
Also, they are very influencer driven and
they
based
just
on
go away.
reference.
Right?
Right.
You need to be very careful of what you're offering because that's going to be the biggest consumer base for you, and you can't ignore them. Yeah, and one is you need to also educate them on how to start saving because today's generation doesn't want to save. They don't want to build houses. They don't want to do anything. It's like spend and do whatever they want, but you have to at the same time be responsible and use the data to inculcate the culture of save, invest here and kind of thing. How do you actually get them back into this and hold them back is my priority. All my future launches, applications will be focusing that particular large segment, which is going to be the next biggest way.
So giving them nudges
Absolutely.
and content.
If you're successful in doing that, nothing left. Be responsible, but at the same time, make sure give them what they want.
So that's
KRC
also a
probably edge computing and 5G will help in the transaction time.
Whatever you do, you need to give them what they want. Technology should work at the time when they are using it. Simple. Because unlike others like you and me, they don't have patience. Simple. Let's accept it.
Yeah, I completely agree with him. Yeah, because today's generation alpha, the way it is, they don't sort of believe in creating assets.
Yeah, exactly.
No assets at all. They earn. They want to earn, burn, enjoy, have fun, which is also people should do that, but no assets.
Right.
So,
Mr. Deshpande.
if I see it at Sanjay Place, I think everything is covered already. We too have a similar kind of approach. I think everybody has same approach. It is, as Ninad rightly mentioned that nowadays no more a selling of things. It's like buying their needs. Okay, so we need to buy their needs. That's one part. Second, we again like Aditya Birla, we also in a traditional organization, 45 years old organization. We understand that just keep on adding digital things to our existing product, whether it will help us or not, we don't know. So what the approach we had is that we are planning for a Shriram 2.0 kind of thing. So my existing business as it is engaging, we do understand that to your existing product, keep on adding the technology and come out with all together different shape doesn't make a sense. As there are fintechs are there, we do understand that as on today they are not our competitors, but yes, multiple fintechs can create a problem for us. So we want to compete with them also. So that Shriram 2.0, what we have done is that rather than adding the technology to my products, we have created same again like what Ashish said. We have a separate team altogether. Like more than a 500 members team we have created for that, where we also coming like a fintech, a Shriram 2.0, where we are launching super app, and then those products, rather than adding technology, we design those products which are like not technology enabled, but they're the technology based products. So if we get that kind of customer to us, yes, we are ready to serve what they want. So my traditional customer, if they're comfortable with it, we serve them. If they are moving towards this bucket, we are ready to serve them as. So we had an approach where like Shriram 2.0, where the entire thing will be digital, and then the data what we have, traditionally what we have, that is the advantage. What we have, they might not have today. So then we can get that advantage and then push the products to that segment of the customer and use the data effectively. That is the approach what we have. So again, coming back, same thing to what Ninad mentioned. It's a trend. The future is by the needs rather than selling the products and services.
True. Mr. Bansal?
So for us, I think the next way what we're seeing is account aggregators from a fintech perspective. Consumer problems from a data, at least we see a roadmap there. But I think what we are waiting, which we think could be a really large landscape change, would be account aggregator integrated with GSTs. So if I'm able to retrieve that at source, right, and read it. One is retrieval, second is reading it, and then culminating into I would say a rail set. I think this would change drastically. So consumers are able to manage. Self-employed, which is where the country is struggling today, is something that I think from a fintech perspective, it will change a lot of parameters. So that we would really look forward to how it emerges. I think a lot of steps have been taken. A lot of banks have already, agreed to come to that. So I think then there will be a level playing field. Today, level playing field is something that I would say innovation is there, but still some people dominate the market, right? So we are looking at for a level playing field. Technology will bring in, but it has to be a level playing field. That's what our thing. And this can change the entire game for the country. That's what our view is.
Okay, Mr. Besekar. Mr. Besekar, you also missed Chris's presentation where he mentioned that 70% of the data that is collected for marketing is reusable for identifying frauds at scale and in real time. So do you see that happening in enterprises as a security expert? How do you see this thing really shaping up? Are organizations really able to tap into that data to then safeguard themselves against frauds?
No, absolutely. So I think we are in a risk business. So I think it is very important for us that we do a right selection of the customers who are coming into the funnel. Else, we all know it's quite a risky business. So yes, we are partnering with a lot of fintechs who are giving us the external data sources. So while he's there on the journey, we get the confidence score whether to put him to the gates or whether to stop him at that level itself. So that's something which we have done. So for us next, I think we have solved 90-95% of the journey. I think the one leg which is more important is a medical in the insurance, what we see, because that is something which we are not able to solve because of the ecosystem. We don't have the data that is specifically which is not available. I think once that is solved, I think the most of the life insurance problems will get. But I think what we have already done is the 90-95% of the journey is where we do the right selections in terms of the right sizing of the products which has been recommended, and in terms of the KYC or in terms of the financial underwriting. And one of the transformations what we have done is, I think AI will again help us in the integration perspective. But even with that, what we have done is we have not digitized the process. I think we have completely transformed is what we call it out, because that is where it's not like PDF uploads or any kind of a data uploads. That is not something. So we completely transform the way we onboard our customers through the API integration. And it's an ecosystem approach what we have taken. It is not that we have tried to build everything on our own. And obviously there are ecosystems, fintechs which are available, which can help us to quickly partner. And while it's an expensive affair, but yeah, that's the approach which we have taken.
Right. Mr. Karnatak.
So, I second Kiran's thought that in insurance, actually, at the industry level, I see that at the industry level, data repository is getting created, which can draw upon, say, AAs, accounting regulators. Also, health data, of course, need consent, regulatory approvals, and so on and so forth. We, at an industry level, also we have sent our recommendations. Few of us, sent a note to the regulator to, set up or help set up such kind of a data ecosystem, which cuts across, insurers and where all sorts of data from banking, or even we have gone to the extent of saying that, health is one part, but even the travel data or the many other kind of data which can be, if it is possible, to be aggregated. If that kind of thing happen, then as an industry, we have a real hyper personalized information about the customer, and it depends on each one of us to how you want to use it efficiently in terms of servicing or selling him more or so on and so forth. So I think that's where we're heading. I hope things fall in place and approvals happen, and then that something should happen. Something can happen in that case.
Right. Now, Chris, you heard of the gentleman present here. What, as an industry practitioner, what are some of the trends you're seeing in CX and the use of data that you think will help organizations create that contextual, experiential, intuitive customer experiences?
Right. And I want to pick up on one of the terms you just mentioned, ecosystem. We know there's no one size fits all analytic product that's going to solve everything, right? So as a technology OEM, our focus is on creating a platform that will snap into every cloud, will work on premise if you still don't want to be there, right? Because there's some industries that are highly regulated, places where security is a special concern, right? We're used to dealing with this. So for us, we want the flexibility to operate in there. But we know whatever tools come out, there's going to be some really new, interesting open source things. There's always things that are happening. And we want to make sure that those can be done. But we also want structure. We want governance. We want the ability to scale. People turn to Teradata because we have mastered enterprise grade at scale. And that means you can meet an SLA, that you can trust the data to be there, that your systems aren't going to go down. I have customers who haven't had their systems turned off in years. We're focused now on rolling upgrades, and so we don't have to take systems down even to upgrade the software. This is the future of the business. So what we always talk about when we look at data, it's outcomes that drive the investment, right? If you start with the outcome, if you start with what you're looking to do, the needle you're looking to move for the business, the impact that you want to make, and you work backwards, right? Technology is the enabler that allows this to happen. Data is the enabler. If you don't have the data, figure out how to go get it. Figure out how to instrument the processes. Figure out who has that data and acquire it, right? Whether it's from a marketplace or from a partner or however it's going to be. But whatever you do, right, however you approach it, whatever your particular problem set is, there's always 100 more use cases that you want to do. So as a company, we've always had a couple of mantras. One of those is bring the work to the data rather than the data to the work, right? And what we mean by that is if you're going to do something, don't make millions of copies of the data, because that creates security risk. It creates all kinds of other potentials where things break, right? And when things break or they're done differently, right? If you make 100 data pipelines and each one of those has a copy of the data, right, or 2/3 of the data, you end up with what we call a pipeline jungle. Data pipelines aren't bad. Pipeline jungles are bad, right? And this is what we sort of advise customers to do, is to say, think about how you bring these together, how you're going to share across the organization, how you're going to solve these things. And if you can bring those queries to the data, and now with models, can you bring those models closer to the data rather than bring the data down into the model? And so that's a lot of what we're working right now, is to operationalize these. And we want to be able to do at the same way we've operationalized around queries for models, so that we can execute millions of models a day, model per customer. So a lot of what we talk about is getting granular, right? Being able to understand individual customers. You can't hyper-personalize if you don't understand you, and you can't, if I'm working to the average customer or the segment-based customer, then I'm targeting something where You may or may not actually match that segment. I need to know about you and your situation and your context. And that means understanding you at a granular level. The more I understand, the better my behavior analysis or my signals are going to be interpreted. So for us, it matters, right, how much you have. We have a process that we call the business-driven architecture roadmap. And what it allows you to do is to take a look at your use cases and the things that you want to do and decide what is the most feasible, right? Do I have the data to do it, right? And what is the most impactful thing that's going to generate the value? Those are the ones you probably want to start first, right? And if you can work backwards from there, you're likely to find outcomes that deliver an ROI. ROI is only generated when you get it into production. There's not much ROI from doing a study or a data science project or even writing the most wonderful white paper, right? Until you can actually react to it, right? And that's rarely a one-time thing, right? Models drift. In 6 months, the average model has to be thrown away and refreshed, right? So you must think about this as an ongoing journey, as something that's going to get better and better. So just like we watch our customers and we want to map their journeys, right? That the data that's available about those, the models and the insights that we're developing for them need to change over time. So it's about building a culture of data to understand this, building the skill sets up in your organization, building the infrastructure kind of at the same time. Do it on the cloud if you can. If not, make sure that you have a model that's built around a platform. So these are kind of our thoughts and our perspective, but I think they apply in general, regardless of what technology you pick to do this and how you go about it. So that helps.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Shweta. I think in the time that we had, we tried to cover a lot of ground, starting from the opportunities that data presents in each of your organizations in terms of creating business impact, the challenges that you face with data governance, data management, data integrity, data cleansing. And we also spoke about some of the interesting use cases that you've identified in each of your organizations. Chris has given us some great action points about driving impact with data, making it outcome oriented. I think on that encouraging and exciting note, we will wrap up today's session. Thank you so much once again to each one of you for contributing your insights and perspectives, and for sharing your thoughts and your action plan when it comes to data-led customer experience within your organizations. Thank you once again. Have a lovely evening, and thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.